lunatic. Go home to your mother.
Alright, I lied. I'm not cool enough to get invited to influencer events, but that was my initial reaction. Though honestly, the design has grown on me in the past month or so. However, I do have one major concern with the design: its safety. Its cold-rolled stainless steel unibody design just doesn't sound like it has been designed with traditional safety ethos in mind. They showed that the panels don't deform and bend when hit with the sledgehammer, which is great if you have a habit of being attacked by sledgehammer-wielding car designers, but in the event of a crash, at least according to my limited understanding at the time, was that vehicle panels are designed to crumple and deform in a crash in order to absorb kinetic energy and slow the rate of deceleration to a survivable level. Instead of jumping to conclusions, I decided to jump into research mode and see how vehicle safety is actually evaluated, and, in the process, learn what the most dangerous car on the road is. What I discovered along the way was truly eye-opening. Trying to quantify what the most dangerous car is actually a surprisingly difficult task. Total annual road deaths peaked in the early 70s as the number of miles being driven rose while vehicle safety was not yet a high priority. Using this raw statistic is not terribly useful for analysing vehicle safety, as there are far too many variables that can affect it. For example, here we can see a massive dip in deaths in World War II as fuel rationing began. So let's plot this in a different way. Let's plot the deaths per billion miles travelled. This allows us to parse out any variations in road use at the very least. Now we can see a real trend. Over the past 100 years, vehicle safety has continually improved. Total road deaths even managed to decline in the 70s as the NHTS began testing vehicle safety, which forced manufacturers to put a bigger focus on survivability. It's clear road safety has risen dramatically thanks to technology and policy improvements, but that doesn't mean there isn't room for improvement. The question I had was, how do we define an unsafe car? It's a surprisingly difficult thing to quantify. We are going to use US data simply because it is the most easily accessible data, but there will be some cultural variables we need to consider in this, especially with America's fondness for trucks that wouldn't fit down most European streets. The most obvious starting point would be to identify the vehicles with the most occupant fatalities using the Fatality and Injury Reporting System tool website. Actually compiling data from the site is a little labour intensive, but thankfully IC Cars has created a report on this already. Here's what they found. The top 14 most dangerous cars by most occupant fatalities per billion miles were all subcompact, compact and sports cars. This does not give us a whole lot of useful data. 6 of the top 14 are sports cars, which are likely more dangerous because of the way people drive them. Another human variable we need to consider. While the most dangerous car by this measure is the Mitsubishi Mirage. This tiny thing. Is that our answer? That driving a small car in a country obsessed with trucks is dangerous? The thing is, despite its size, it fared okay in America's car safety rating systems. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration gave it a score of 4 stars out of 5, while the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety gave it an overall positive review, only getting a poor rating for this test, the small overlap frontal impact test, because the dummy's head managed to slip off the airbag and hit the A-pillar, while the footwell deformed too much, potentially causing damage to the lower body. For me, these results are not indicative of a vehicle that has over 4 times the national average of occupant fatalities. And that certainly isn't because it can carry more occupants. It certainly isn't going to dissuade your average mother from using it to drive their kids to school. Let's dive into the testing system and see if we can unearth the cause of this strange discrepancy. For now, let's focus on frontal crash tests, as it is the scenario where most fatal crashes occur. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's test measures the likelihood for driver or passenger injury when a vehicle crashes into a fixed barrier at 35 miles per hour. The Insurance Institute of Highway Safety's test are slightly different, partially because they were created to improve on the NHTSA's tests, which were created in the 70s. They increased the test speed to 40 miles per hour and made the impact area smaller. Both of these moves were intended to make the test harder to pass, and that showed with the Mirage's poor performance, but that poor performance was mostly down to its airbags not overlapping enough. The 2017 Mirage model corrected this problem with increasing the length of the side curtain airbag. That increased difficulty resulted in a critical design issue being identified and fixed. Yet, the NHTSA's test, America's government-run testing program, has not changed since the 1970s. Just to make it crystal clear why that is an absolutely shocking revelation, this is an IIHS test showing a 1959 Chevy Bel Air running into a 2009 Chevy Malibu. The crash test dummy of the Bel Air is smashed as the steering column gets forcefully pushed into the driver's seat. Modern cars avoid this because the steering column has been designed to be torsionally stiff to allow steering, but is designed to collapse when force is placed on it in the longitudinal direction. The Bel Air had no airbags, a standard feature today. It also had no headrests to prevent whiplash and no seatbelts. These are the kind of cars the 1970s test was made to test for. It is not fit for purpose for today's cars. Today, nearly all vehicles are rated 4 or 5 stars, which makes the job of avoiding a vehicle with a terrible safety record like the Mitsubishi Mirage a very difficult job. It's time the tests were made more difficult. The frontal test for the NHTSA is set at 35 miles per hour, but the force of impact is not solely determined by the speed of impact. It's also determined by the weight of the vehicle. This test only simulates the impact of two identical weight vehicles. That's not good enough for a car that is intended to drive in a country where the most popular car is a Ford F-Series, a truck that is twice the weight of the Mirage. This is just one obvious oversight in their testing methods, but there are countless other issues with the state of safety testing today. For example, crash test dummies are based on the average adult man. Tests for the average adult woman do not exist, which is odd considering women constitute 50% of the American population and currently have a 47% higher chance of serious injury in a frontal crash. The only variable there is the driver is a woman. Let that sink in. 47%. That is insane. Part of that statistic is due to men having higher bone densities, among other anatomical differences that make men less likely to be injured. That is unavoidable, but if anything, that's a reason to design with women in mind. Simple things like the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety's test for whiplash uses the maximum possible neck deflection as a result of headrest design, but it only tests for the average male dummy. That test doesn't exist for the NHTSA's test, and when the IIHS introduced it, it forced automakers to design better headrests to prevent whiplash. But it forced them to design better headrests for men, not women. Whiplash is one of the most common injuries resulting from a car crash even today because headrests are not often adjusted for the individual driving. Maybe if the testing used a larger variety of crash test dummies, it would force automotive companies to introduce automatically adjusting headrests as part of a standard safety package, which has been a feature in some vehicles. That's just a simple example, but by testing both female and male dummies, it will force automakers to make their cars safer for all road users. These archaic tests do not just make it difficult to identify the most dangerous car, they make it difficult to identify the safest, which is our true goal. Automotive manufacturers making real efforts to improve safety are simply not being acknowledged in these tests. Tesla's cars perform incredibly well in frontal crashes because there is no engine block, allowing the entire front section to act as a crumple zone. Tesla also has auto brake and warning sound features that help prevent crashes altogether. Its score? 5 stars. 1 star separates the NHTSA's testing of a vehicle with 4 times the national average of occupant fatalities and a vehicle which features massive leaps in occupant safety technology. That needs to change soon. For now, if you are looking to buy a safe vehicle, I recommend you avoid NHTSA results altogether. They are useless. There are international tests like the European NCAP which test for more things but still rate the Mirage with 4 stars. The Insurance Institute of Highway Safety test has been continually adding new tests. They test for auto braking and a few other modern safety features, and they should be applauded for that. Their rating system is superior to any I have seen, but it can be a little confusing for the consumer. Most importantly, their superior tests don't stop automakers with poor safety design from using the NHTSA's archaic testing and rating procedures in their marketing. I only discovered these flaws in the rating system because it is literally my job to research these things. That cannot be expected of the average consumer. Testing is an essential